insulin resistance, pre-diabetes, diabetes, it's a spectrum, it's a continuum. And a couple of years ago, a gentleman I know was feeling unwell. So he went to his doctor and they ordered a series of tests, of course. And his fasting blood sugar came back at 6.8 millimoles per liter. Now, from the numbers I gave you before, you can see that this falls within the pre-diabetic range. He was like, okay, it's pre-diabetic. I'm still okay because I'm not diabetic yet. I'm just pre-diabetic. Now, this is someone that's standing at the edge of a cliff with one foot over the edge and the other foot on a banana peel. And he feels that he's fine. He doesn't realize that he's in danger, that diabetes is virtually knocking at his door. So these fasting blood sugar numbers can be very, very deceptive. So let's say you check your fasting blood sugar and it's 90 milligrams per deciliter. And let's say that to maintain that level, which is normal, you need about, let's pick a number, 50 units of insulin. A year later, you check your blood sugar and it's still 90 milligrams per deciliter. But in this time, you've developed insulin resistance. So now you need 100 units of insulin to maintain that normal blood sugar. So the blood sugar is still the same, but the amount of insulin that you need to keep it at that level is double. So you can see that your pancreas is working overtime to produce extra insulin in order to keep this blood sugar within normal levels. So that's why it's deceptive, because looking at the blood sugar numbers alone, you don't get an idea of what's actually going on. And I've got a video about insulin resistance, which I'll link somewhere up here or down in the description. So what happened to our gentleman? About 3 months later, he went for a checkup and they repeated his fasting blood sugar. And this time it was not 6.8, it was now 7.3 millimoles per liter. So now he was firmly in the diabetes camp. And I would have argued that when his blood sugar was 6.8, that he was already basically diabetic, because some of these numbers, we use them as a guide to treat. It doesn't mean that if you're at 6.8, you're not having the same problems, the same complications as someone whose blood sugar is 8 or 9 millimoles per liter. So just because you're in the pre-diabetic zone, it doesn't mean that you're safe. And some people would say that, okay, just because you're pre-diabetic, it doesn't mean that it will advance to full-blown diabetes. Unfortunately, people of color, people from Southeast Asia, South America, Africa, who have those origins, have a higher chance of developing type 2 diabetes. So if you fall within these ethnic groups, these ethnic origins, and you have blood sugar numbers in the pre-diabetic range, then it is very, very, very likely, there's a very high chance that that pre-diabetes is going to progress and become full-blown diabetes. And then again, there are some people who only find out that they have blood sugar issues when they start having problems with their eyes, or they start having nerve pain or other complications that people associate with full-blown diabetes. But they develop them while their numbers are still in the pre-diabetic range. So that shows you that even though you're pre-diabetic and the numbers haven't reached the diabetic levels, something is going wrong. Something is very wrong in your body for you to be having those complications. Now, you may have someone who has normal blood sugar, but they have insulin resistance and high insulin levels. And this person may have high blood pressure because insulin resistance and high insulin has a negative effect on your blood vessels. There are two conditions that can cause very high blood sugar levels in the morning. One is the dawn phenomenon or the dawn effect, and the 𝐁𝐥𝐸 effect. I'll spell that on the screen. I've been told that I pronounced that wrong, so I know I've just butchered it. Please forgive me. So I've gone into the differences between these two conditions in a previous video, which I'll link. I'll be linking a lot of videos in this video because there's a lot of things that are related to what I'm talking about that I've already made videos about. A common question I get is, what numbers would I expect to see if I have the dawn phenomenon when I check my blood sugar in the morning? And the short answer is, it depends. Because there's no unified, agreed value because of individual variability. That's because human beings are so different. The numbers for me, if I have the dawn phenomenon, may be different, very, very different, I guarantee you, from the numbers that you would see if you checked your blood sugar in the morning and if you also have the dawn phenomenon. But generally speaking, it's agreed that if your blood sugar rises by 20 milligrams per dl or 1.1 millimoles per liter higher than your lowest blood sugar during the night, then you have the dawn phenomenon. So let's say that your blood sugar, your lowest blood sugar at night is 110 milligrams per dl. If you check it in the morning and it's maybe 130, that's an increase of 20 milligrams per dl, then you have the dawn phenomenon. If you're using a continuous glucose monitor, then this is really simple, because basically all you have to do is check your graph. As long as you're not having abnormally low blood sugar at night, you just look for the lowest point of your graph. That's the lowest number during the night. And then the number between 5 and 7 a.m. in the morning, the highest number at that time. And then you subtract them. And if the difference is 20 milligrams per deciliter or more, or 1.1 millimoles per liter or more, then you can say, yes, you have the dawn phenomenon. Like I said, this is absolutely effortless. It's, very, very easy to do if you're using a continuous glucose monitor. If you're not, then that would mean that you'd have to be up half the night, poking yourself, checking your blood sugar, which doesn't sound like fun at all. So I'll give you a way that you can have an idea if you have the dawn phenomenon, if you don't have a continuous glucose monitor. It involves a little bit of math. So I'll basically put the formula up on the screen. You check your blood sugar before breakfast, before lunch, and before dinner. Then you take your pre-lunch blood sugar value and add that to your pre-dinner blood sugar value and divide by 2. So basically what you're doing is you're getting the average of those two numbers. Then you take that and subtract it from your pre-breakfast blood sugar number. And that will give you a value that we'll call X. So to calculate the extent of the dawn phenomenon, you would do 0.49 times X plus 15. And once again, if it's over 20 milligrams per dl, then you can say that you have the dawn phenomenon. This is kind of like a rough estimate. What you get from using a continuous glucose monitor will be much more accurate. So why should you be bothered about the dawn phenomenon anyway? Because after all, for most of the day, your blood sugar is within, acceptable limits, and it's only high in the morning. Having all that sugar circulating in your blood is going to increase your HbA1c. That's the average blood sugar measurement over 3 to 4 months. And I have a video that I'll link up or down below about HbA1c. So the higher your HbA1c, the more likely you are to develop the complications of diabetes, like diabetic nerve damage, heart disease, diabetic eye disease, kidney disease. Usually, if you have the dawn phenomenon, your blood sugar would come down from the peak within like 1 to 2 hours. But there are some people who have an extended form of the dawn phenomenon where their blood sugar stays high for 4-5 hours, well through breakfast and well into the morning. For someone like that, they're having hours and hours of their day where they have very high blood sugar levels. So how do you bring down these very high levels of blood sugar in the morning? You have to have an open mind. You have to be ready to experiment, okay? Because it's so individual that what works for your wife, for your husband, for your aunt, for your brother, for your grandmother may just not work for you. So you may have to try different things before you find what works for you. Another thing is that you have to be patient. This isn't something that you just fell into overnight. You didn't like wake up one morning and, oh, wow, gosh, I'm diabetic, No, that's not how it happened. This took years. So you have to be patient because it's going to take a while for you to be able to experiment long enough to find things that are actually going to make a difference. And, you don't just try one thing for one day and say, oh, no, rubbish, that doesn't work. You have to give it a while to actually see if it's going to make a difference. So I say this a lot, reduce the carbohydrates in your evening meal. Less of the yam, pasta, rice, and more protein, more meat, fish, eggs. You can eat eggs anytime. So more of the protein stuff than above ground, particularly leafy green vegetables. Not potatoes. People keep asking me about potatoes. No, not potatoes. Potatoes are carbohydrates. So if you're going to have potatoes, then minimize them. Concentrate on lots of protein and particularly green leafy vegetables, but vegetables in general, okay? Then I usually recommend that you don't eat after 6 p.m., right? You have your supper, dinner, whatever you want to call it, before 6 in the evening. In an ideal world, this would work, for a lot of people. But being human beings, food has a special place in our hearts because eating is a social thing, You might want to eat with your family. You won't eat alone before 6 and then sit and watch your family eating their food without joining them. So that might not be convenient for you. For some of us, food is like a sedative, it's a stress reliever, makes you feel good, If you eat before 6, then you're sitting twiddling your thumbs for hours before you go to sleep. For the most part, trying not to think about food. For a lot of people, that's what happens. So you're sitting thinking about how not to eat. And the chances are that you'll have a snack. And the chances are, again, that snack you're going to have is not something that's going to be blood sugar friendly. So if you're in that situation where you're likely to snack on something that's not going to be good for your blood sugar, or you're thinking about food a lot, then you might be better off just shifting that meal, not having it before 6, but having it maybe around 8, 8:30, and just making sure that it's not too close to when you go to sleep, because that can affect your sleep. And then again, do 20 to 30 minutes of moderate aerobic exercise after you eat. What this does is that it encourages your muscles to take the glucose out of your blood so that that food that you've eaten starts getting used up, so that when you go to sleep, hopefully it will reduce your baseline blood sugar levels that you go to bed with, If you don't exercise, then the food goes into your system, the sugar goes into your blood, and you're not using it. It will be stored as fat, so it will be lingering in your blood. And then when you start off with a high baseline blood sugar at night, when you now have the dawn phenomenon in the morning, you're up here, and then the dawn phenomenon adds to it, and then you end up here in the morning. But if you have a lower baseline, and then you experience the dawn phenomenon, instead of being up here, you'll be somewhere down here. So it lowers that baseline blood sugar at night. Some people feel that that exercise is going to empty the liver of glycogen, because part of what contributes to that dawn phenomenon, that high blood sugar in the morning, is the liver releasing glucose into the blood by breaking down glycogen. So some people feel, okay, if you exercise, then it will exhaust the glycogen in the liver. No, your liver is very, very intelligent. Those are emergency supplies. The first thing it does is, once they're going down, it replenishes them, right? The glycogen is there to save your life. So that glycogen is not going to be depleted by 20 minutes or 30 minutes of moderate aerobic exercise. And exercise, we're talking nothing complicated. You can just walk. That is just the simplest, easiest thing to do. If you can't walk outdoors, and walk on the spot. There's somebody, I think Leslie Sanson, that's developed a whole ecosystem of walking DVDs. That's just what she does. DVDs on walking. So you can walk. And what you need to do is to be slightly out of breath. You should be able to talk, hold a conversation, but you should be slightly breathless. You do that for 20, 30 minutes after eating. So be patient. We're getting to the good stuff. You can try some apple cider vinegar. 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar in a glass of water with your evening meal. Then the same thing before you go to sleep. And then the same thing in the morning. What this does is that it increases your body's sensitivity, particularly your muscles, their sensitivity to the insulin that's already in your system, so that makes them more efficient at heeding insulin's call, would I say, and taking that blood sugar out of the blood in the presence of insulin. Another thing you can try, and this isn't going to prevent the dawn phenomenon, but when it's already occurred, this can help. And that would be to take your medication earlier in the morning, so that when you're having that high peak, then you'll be taking your medicine so that it can help to bring it down. Some people say eat breakfast. Some people say skip breakfast. The aim of eating breakfast is that the theory is that it's supposed to promote the release of insulin, so that you eat and insulin is released. And this will now tackle the dawn phenomenon, help to bring down that sugar. But one problem is that you already have a whole load of sugar in your system. When you eat, you're adding more sugar to your system, so that the insulin that is secreted is battling the sugar that's already there and battling the sugar that's coming in as well. So one way to counteract this is to not eat a sweet breakfast. No yams and rice and cereal and toast and all that kind of stuff. Eat a savory breakfast. That would be things like eggs and, tomatoes, veggies, peppers, fish, sardines, unsweetened yogurt, Greek yogurt, that kind of thing. So that will have less impact on your blood sugar, so that the insulin that is released can then work on the sugar that's already in your system from the dawn phenomenon. And then if you skip breakfast, then you wouldn't have anything coming into your system at all, so that your body can concentrate on trying to lower the blood sugar that's arisen because of the dawn phenomenon. But the problem there is that there are some drugs that you just have to take with food. I challenge you to try taking, no, don't take me up on that. Try taking your metformin without eating. That is a disaster. So in that kind of situation, I wouldn't advise that you skip breakfast, because you need food to take that metformin. Some other drugs may not have those kinds of issues, but in particular, metformin is a problem. So in that case, you're better off eating breakfast, but make sure that, like I said, it's more of a savory rather than a sweet breakfast with all those things that I mentioned. And I have a video about metformin and side effects that I'll link up there or down in the description, so that you can have a look after you finish watching this video. And once again, exercise to the rescue. You can do some exercise, moderate activity, while that blood sugar is high in the morning. So that will help your muscles to use up some of that excess sugar that's floating around in your blood, and it will help your blood sugar to come down. I like to do power yoga. That way I get some exertion, but that flowing stuff, kind of helps me calm down. I find it very soothing. Also, I walk about 30-40 minutes, and I listen to podcasts while I do that. So that's like double use of my time, and I find that's relaxing as well. So by doing something that exerts you and gets your muscles to use up the sugar that's in your blood, and then also calms you down, it's like a twofer, 2 for 1. So that you're getting that activity and you're getting that reduction in your stress levels, as stress hormones, cortisol, the norepinephrine, the flight or fight hormone. So it calms you down. And those two hormones there, they antagonize insulin. So that means that as insulin is trying to get your blood sugar to come down, those two hormones are trying to get your blood sugar to come up. So by minimizing them, then you're also helping insulin to work better, and that will help your blood sugar to come down. One thing that I hardly hear anyone talking about when it comes to the dawn phenomenon is sleep. And sleep is so important for almost everything: mental health, physical health, the works. Here again, in the dawn phenomenon, sleep is so important. There's a hormone, a chemical messenger that's produced in your brain called growth hormone. And this hormone is important not just for growth, like, in babies and children and teenagers, but in adults as well, because it's used for regeneration and repair and restoration. And the problem with growth hormone when it comes to sugar regulation is that it antagonizes the effects of insulin. So it works against insulin. That means that in the presence of growth hormone, you will have higher blood sugar levels. And studies have shown that if you block the effects of growth hormone at night, then you don't get the dawn phenomenon in the morning. And you might be saying, yay, that means that all we have to do to stop the dawn phenomenon is to block our nightly release of growth hormone. You need growth hormone. You need that spike. Because like I said, it's needed for regeneration and repair. Now, when you don't get proper sleep, you don't get enough, or it's disturbed, it's not good quality, the growth hormone release is prolonged. So instead of having a one and done, it goes up, spikes, and then comes down, it goes up and it stays up. It might come down, but then it goes up again. So the period of time during the night where you have growth hormone being released is extended, it's increased. So that means that you're promoting that insulin resistance, that higher blood sugar, for a longer period of time. And then this spills over into the morning. What you can do is get a good night's sleep. I have people who message me at 2 o'clock in the morning. I wake up and I see messages timed 1:30, 1:45, 2. That means that a lot of people are still awake at that time. So if you can get to bed around 11. I know it's hard, I know, but it's like a muscle. Once you have it in your mind, you decide that you're going to do it. Then you find ways, your mind starts working on it. You find ways to make it happen. If you get sleep before 11, then you'll have a chance to get into that really deep sleep. And then you'll have a chance for your growth hormone to be released when it's supposed to, around 1, 2 a.m. And then it will go up, peak the way it should, and then come down to where it's supposed to be. And then very minimal levels of secretion will be maintained through the night. So this is part of the reason why shift workers, people who drive at night, doctors and nurses, people who don't get enough sleep have a higher incidence, a higher chance of developing type 2 diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, and other metabolic disturbances. And if you want some more simple ways to bring down your blood sugar, watch this next video.